The winter evening at JFK International Airport carried the particular chaos of holiday travel, where exhaustion and anticipation collided in equal measure. Among the surge of humanity, Maya Collins navigated the terminal with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to make impossibility routine. 28 years old, she moved through the crowd with her son Eli's hand firmly in hers, her other arm managing bags that contained their carefully rationed world. Her winter coat, worn at the elbows but meticulously clean, spoke of pride maintaining its vigil despite circumstance. Eli Collins, 6 years old and clutching a toy airplane that had seen better days, possessed the particular resilience of children who sense their parents' burdens without fully understanding them. He pointed excitedly at planes through the massive windows, his enthusiasm untainted by the weight his mother carried. At the gate, Maya's search through her purse for boarding passes revealed hands that trembled slightly, not from cold, but from the bone-deep exhaustion of working 3 jobs to keep their small life afloat. Grace Martinez, the gate agent whose 50-something years had taught her to recognize struggle beneath composed surfaces, expedited their boarding with a kindness that asked for no acknowledgement. It was a small mercy in a world that had become transactional, and Maya's quiet gratitude flickered across her face like candlelight in wind. Inside the Boeing 737, Maya faced the overhead bin with arms that had cleaned office buildings until 3 that morning, served coffee since 5, and managed 2 preschoolers during the afternoon. The carry-on bag might as well have weighed 1,000 pounds. Before she could steel herself for the effort, a figure rose from the aisle seat with fluid military precision. Colonel Colton Hayes, 35 years of age and wearing his Air Force dress uniform like armor against the world, lifted the bag with an economy of motion that spoke of practiced competence in all things. His "allow me" carried no expectation of extended gratitude, and perhaps that was why Maya's simple thank you held genuine warmth despite her wariness of unexpected kindness. She had learned that help often came with invisible price tags, but something in the colonel's bearing suggested a man who acted from principle rather than agenda. Eli's wonder at the uniform transformed the moment from transaction to human connection. The boy's whispered observations about the soldier man drew the faintest shift in Colton's expression, not quite a smile, but a softening that suggested memories of his own childhood fascinations. They settled into their seats, Maya and Eli taking middle and window, with Colton returning to his aisle position like a sentinel assuming his post. As Rebecca Shaw, the flight attendant whose maternal presence had comforted thousands of travelers over her 20-year career, demonstrated safety procedures, Eli mimicked each action with his toy plane. His concentration was absolute, as if memorizing these rituals might bring him closer to his dream of flight. Maya watched her son with the complex mixture of pride and sorrow that had become her constant companion since David's death joy and Eli's resilience. Grief that his father wasn't here to witness it. The sandwich Maya produced from her bag had been assembled from carefully hoarded ingredients, modest but made with love. When she broke it in half, giving Eli the larger portion despite his protests, Colton observed the interaction while appearing absorbed in his tablet. Military personnel were trained to assess situations peripherally, and what he saw was a mathematics of sacrifice calculated in every gesture. Her stomach's audible protest went unacknowledged, as she insisted she had eaten at the airport, a lie delivered with such practiced ease, it had become almost truth. 30 minutes into the flight, Eli had become absorbed in his coloring book, the pages soft from repeated use, but treated with the care of treasure. He worked intently on an airplane drawing, tongue slightly out in concentration, occasionally glancing at Colton's wings insignia as if trying to capture their essence in crayon. Maya had fought sleep with the determination of someone who knew that letting guard down invited catastrophe. She shook her head, pinched her arm, employed every trick learned during countless night shifts. But the human body has limits, and hers had been exceeded long ago. Her head began its slow surrender to gravity, finding Colton's shoulder with the inevitability of water-seeking level ground. His initial stiffening was reflexive, the instinct of a man unaccustomed to unexpected human contact. But something in the moment, perhaps the trust implicit in unconscious vulnerability, perhaps recognition of exhaustion that transcended mere tiredness, made him deliberately relax. He adjusted his position subtly, allowing her head to find a more comfortable angle, and continued reading his classified briefings, as if nothing had changed. When Rebecca approached with the beverage cart, Her experienced eyes took in the tableau with understanding. These small dramas played out daily at 30,000 feet, but something in this particular scene, the officer's protective stillness, the mother's absolute exhaustion, the child's quiet contentment, spoke of larger stories. Colton's subtle hand gesture stopping her from waking Maya required no explanation. Rebecca served him coffee and placed extra cookies on his tray with a conspirator's smile. Eli looked up from his coloring to see his mother sleeping against the stranger's shoulder. In that moment, child and soldier regarded each other across the bridge of the sleeping woman. Colton raised a finger to his lips in the universal gesture of gentle conspiracy, and Eli's answering grin created an alliance that transcended words. The boy returned to his coloring with renewed focus, occasionally stealing glances at the medals and ribbons that represented stories he could only imagine. For nearly an hour, Colton maintained his position despite the ache developing in his shoulder. When turbulence jostled the plane, his arm moved with swift, protective instinct, bracing Maya to prevent her startled awakening. He switched his tablet to his left hand, accepting the discomfort as negligible compared to the importance of preserving her rest. In that hour, he became guardian of something precious and fragile, not just sleep, but the brief respite from a world that demanded too much from those who had already given everything. Maya's awakening came suddenly, confusion giving way to mortification as she realized her position. The flush that colored her cheeks spoke of pride wounded by necessity, of a woman who hated needing anything from anyone yet found herself literally leaning on a stranger. Her stammered apologies tumbled out. But Colton's response carried a warmth that surprised them both. His observation that she clearly needed the rest held no judgment, only recognition of human limitation meeting human need. Eli's cheerful announcement that his mother had been snoring shattered the tension with the innocent honesty only children possess. Maya's mortification transformed into something closer to rueful humor, while Colton's mouth quirked in what keen observers might recognize as his version of amusement. When Eli turned his attention to Colton, asking if he was a pilot, the conversation shifted from awkward aftermath to genuine connection. Colton's explanation of his role, his patient answers to Eli's endless questions about medals and ribbons, revealed a man who understood how to speak to children without condescension. He allowed Eli to touch the ribbons with careful fingers, explaining each in terms that honored both the boy's intelligence and innocence. When Eli asked why he had so many ribbons, Colton's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. His answer that each represented a mission where his team came home safe carried weight that Maya recognized. It was the careful truth of someone who had seen too much, filtered through the necessity of preserving childhood wonder. The conversation expanded naturally to include Maya, though she found herself sharing more than intended. Perhaps it was the altitude, or the strange intimacy created by her unconscious vulnerability, or simply the relief of speaking to someone who listened without immediately offering solutions. She spoke of visiting her mother Dorothy in Denver, of Eli's excitement about snow, of the 3 jobs that kept them afloat but never quite swimming. Colton shared his own purpose attending a memorial service for fallen squadron members, and in that exchange of destinations, they recognized fellow travelers on grief's unmarked road. When Eli eagerly told Colton about his toy plane collection, his favorite being an F-16 his daddy had given him, Maya's hand moved unconsciously to the small pendant at her neck. Colton noticed, but didn't probe, understanding that some stories emerge in their own time. The boy's chatter about wanting to be a pilot filled the space between adult griefs with the persistent hope that makes bearing witness to childhood both heartbreaking and healing. Rebecca's return with beverage service provided Colton an opportunity for kindness, disguised as regulation. His claim about being unable to travel with unfinished food items was transparent fiction, but delivered with such matter-of-fact authority that Maya found herself accepting the offered snacks for Eli. It was assistance stripped of charity's sting, wrapped instead in the logical framework that allowed pride to remain intact while need was met. Denver International Airport's baggage claim area pulsed with the particular frenzy of holiday arrivals. Maya and Eli stood at the carousel as bags circled with hypnotic monotony, none of them theirs. 45 minutes became an hour, hope diminishing with each revolution. When the carousel stopped, empty of their possessions, Maya felt the familiar sensation of one more thing going wrong in a life that had become an obstacle course of small disasters. At the lost luggage counter, Brandon Foster represented every overwhelmed service worker during peak season, young, clearly new, fumbling with systems he barely understood. His explanation that it could be 24 to 48 hours before their bags arrived might as well have been a year. Eli's quiet tears weren't about clothes or toiletries, but about the special blanket that had been his father's, now somewhere in the airline's labyrinthine tracking system. Colton's appearance at the counter shifted the entire dynamic. His introduction, complete with full rank, transformed Brandon from fumbling apology to focused efficiency. The colonel's lie about medication for the child was delivered with such calm authority that it became truth through force of conviction alone. His guidance through proper protocols, referencing regulations Brandon didn't know existed, turned impossible into merely difficult. Within minutes, promises of priority tracking replaced vague timelines. Outside, when Maya confronted him about the deception, Colton's response revealed the pragmatism of someone who understood that systems sometimes required creative navigation. His observation that Eli needed his blanket, and that regulations sometimes required interpretation, spoke of a man who had learned when rules served humanity, and when humanity required rules to bend. Denver's December rain turned the pickup area into a chaos of umbrellas and hurried movements. Maya's phone delivered another small blow. Her mother's neighbor, Harold, who was to collect them, had fallen and couldn't drive. Dorothy was coming, but would be at least an hour. As rain blew sideways, soaking through inadequate shelter, Maya pulled Eli deeper under the overhang with the practiced movement of someone used to shielding others from storms, both literal and metaphorical. Colton's offer of transportation came without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. His rental SUV represented simple logistics. He had vehicle, they needed transport, equation balanced. But Maya's pride warred with practicality, as Eli shivered in the rain. Her eventual acceptance came not from her own comfort, but from maternal necessity. Another small surrender in the daily campaign of single parenthood. Inside the warm vehicle, Eli fell asleep almost instantly, the excitement and stress of travel overwhelming his small body's reserves. The rain created a cocoon of sound around them, as Maya provided directions to her childhood home. In that enclosed space, with her son safe and warm in the back seat, she found herself sharing more than intended. The story emerged in fragments, architecture dreams deferred, David's construction work supporting her studies, the promise that it would be his turn after her graduation. Colton's own sharing came measured but genuine. Sarah's death 5 years prior from aggressive cancer, 26 months from diagnosis to end. Their plans for children dissolved in hospital rooms and treatment schedules. Neither offered platitudes about everything happening for reasons or better places waiting. They simply acknowledged the geography of loss, two people who had learned that grief was not a destination but a country you never fully left. The modest 2-story house in Stapleton wore its age with dignity. Paint fresh despite economic constraints. Garden dormant, but clearly loved. Dorothy Brennan burst from the front door before Colton's vehicle fully stopped, maternal concern overriding everything, including the umbrella forgotten in her haste. Her assessment of Maya included the catalog of weight lost and exhaustion, gained that only mothers could compile with such speed and accuracy. Dorothy's insistence that Colton come in for coffee brooked no refusal. Her kitchen smelled of cinnamon and comfort, cookies appearing as if by magic while she conducted an interrogation disguised as hospitality. Colton navigated her questions with respect and humor, recognizing a protective mother exercising her prerogatives. When Maya carried a drowsing Eli upstairs to what had been his nursery when they lived here before, Dorothy's demeanor shifted. Her revelations about Maya's relentless work schedule, her refusal of help, her need to prove she could manage alone, painted a portrait of survival, achieved at tremendous cost. Dorothy's observation that sometimes people needed help, whether they admitted it or not, carried the weight of frustrated love watching suffering it couldn't alleviate. The connection between Fort Carson and David's death emerged with terrible clarity. Dorothy's mention of the auxiliary airfield project, the construction accident that claimed David's life, transformed the evening's warm kitchen into a space suddenly charged with the electricity of unspoken recognitions. Colton's expression didn't change, but Maya, returning downstairs, caught the shift in atmosphere with the hypervigilance of someone who had learned to read dangers in subtle signs. That night, Maya's internet search revealed truths that sleep couldn't soften. Articles from 2 years past detailed the construction accident during runway expansion, the failure of temporary supports during an unexpected storm, 3 civilian contractors dead. David's name appeared with terrible finality, his photograph showing the grin she still saw in Eli's expressions. Colonel Colton Hayes, quoted as Project Military Liaison, spoke of investigations and paramount concerns for civilian safety. The timestamp showing 3:47 a.m. testified to a night spent traveling paths that led nowhere except deeper into loss. 3 days passed in careful avoidance. Maya didn't respond to Colton's text about the luggage, which had arrived exactly as he'd ensured it would. She took Eli to Confluence Park, seeking air and clarity, finding neither. The playground sounds seemed distant as she sat watching but not seeing, caught in the paralysis of processing connections too large for immediate comprehension. When Colton jogged past in civilian running gear, the uniform's absence made him seem both younger and more vulnerable. Eli's excited recognition prevented any possibility of avoidance, his chatter about returned blankets and new model airplanes filling space adults couldn't navigate. Over the boy's head, their eyes met with the weight of mutual recognition he had always known. She now knew he knew, and both understood that some truths existed beyond the simple mathematics of blame and responsibility. At Riverside Café, with Eli safely distracted by hot chocolate and muffins, they attempted conversation with the careful steps of people crossing uncertain ice, the weather, the memorial service, the cafe's pleasant atmosphere, all serving as runway before the inevitable landing. When Maya finally spoke of the airfield project, Colton's simple yes carried no deflection or defense, just acknowledgement of fact bearing terrible weight. Her words about David's carefulness, his triple checking of everything, his supervisor's assurance that supports should have held, emerged between tears she didn't try to hide. Colton's hands on his coffee cup tightened with the control of someone preventing breakage of more than ceramic. His recitation of names David Collins, Marcus Thompson, James Newen, came with the precision of litany repeated in dark hours. He knew their stories, their families, the specific texture of each loss. The revelation about anonymous support transformed Maya's understanding of 2 years' survival. Monthly envelopes, cashier's checks never traceable, amounts calculated to help without humiliating. Grocery money when her account approached zero. Eli's preschool tuition when choosing between education and electricity became untenable. The postmark's variety had suggested organization, not individual. The union's denial, insurance company's ignorance, all pointing toward a single source sitting across from her now. Colton's explanation survivor benefits inadequate. Financial support as minimal response to ultimate responsibility revealed a man who had translated guilt into action without expectation of absolution. 2 years of partial salary diverted, not charity but investment in futures he felt responsible for protecting. When Maya's anger surfaced about gratitude mixed with resentment, about needing help while hating the need, about accepting envelopes while wanting her husband back, Colton absorbed it without defense. His observation that strength deserved support, that loads too heavy for one should be shared without shame, met her fury with understanding that deflated rage into something more complex. The admission that initial guilt had transformed into respect for her resilience, that reports of her dedication had made support feel like privilege rather than penance, revealed layers neither had expected to expose. The museum visit with Eli became a study in careful reconstruction. Colton's explanations of aircraft carried infectious enthusiasm that made Eli bloom like flowers in unexpected sun. Maya watched her son absorb male attention. Not replacement, but supplement, filling spaces she couldn't reach despite every effort. When Colton mentioned his qualification to fly the massive B-52, Eli's hero worship intensified into something approaching reverence. Dorothy's dinner invitation, accompanied by pot roast portions suggesting expectation of armies, created evening of surprising ease. Stories of Maya's childhood, Dorothy's technological misadventures, Colton's dry observations, all weaving into fabric of temporary family. The Colonel helping with dishes, teaching Eli proper drying technique with military precision applied to dinnerware, became image of possibility neither adult quite dared name. 2 days before return to New York, Colton's arrangement of flight simulator time revealed planning and purpose beyond casual kindness. Eli's joy at the prospect rendered maternal protests irrelevant. In the simulator, watching her son's confidence soar under patient instruction, Maya saw future possibilities that transcended current limitations. That evening's porch conversation, coffee steaming between them in December cold, brought necessary revelations. Colton's absence from site during the accident, his presence in Washington delivering progress reports, while supports failed in unexpected weather, painted picture of responsibility without proximity. Maya's admission that David would have worked regardless, that reliability mattered more than conditions to him, acknowledged how virtues become vulnerabilities when fate turns cruel. The memorial garden at Fort Carson provided unexpected closure. David's name, among others, military and civilian together in democracy of loss, created context larger than individual grief. Eli's placement of his toy plane, his small salute learned from watching Colton, honored not just father but community of sacrifice Maya hadn't known existed. Colton's presentation of CAP scholarship information, legitimate program for youth aviation education with Eli genuinely qualifying, opened doors Maya hadn't dared approach. The suggestion of staying in Denver, near support systems, both familial and institutional, near possibilities for completing her architecture degree, near him, hung between them like question mark drawn in hope. Her anger at arrangements made without consultation met his calm acknowledgement that options weren't obligations, that help offered didn't require acceptance, but deserved consideration. Dorothy's intervention, revealing weeks of careful planning to create possibilities, not certainties, deflated rage into recognition of care expressed through action. Maya's admission of fear of hoping, of trusting, of feeling, met Colton's understanding without judgment. His acknowledgement that neither sought to replace what was lost, that understanding could grow from shared comprehension of absence, offered framework for building something new from broken pieces. The airport goodbye carried weight of possibility rather than finality. Colton's gift of CAP instructor wings for when Eli began the program spoke of future assumed rather than hoped. His plans for New York visits, Pentagon meetings providing excuse for contact, suggested patience willing to match whatever pace trust required. Back in Brooklyn's cramped spaces, Maya's systematic dismantling of survival's architecture proceeded with military efficiency. Notice, given to 3 jobs, received varied responses: Susan at Harbor Coffee's tears of joy, the Wellingtons' panic about childcare, night supervisors' indifference, all confirming decision's rightness. Calls to Denver, accepting position, arranging housing, confirming new life's logistics, culminated in call to Colton, admitting continued fear. His response about comfort zones killing more dreams than fear ever could revealed philosopher beneath soldier's exterior. The move proceeded with Colton's leave time devoted to supervision, his intensity applied to furniture placement, amusing Dorothy even as she critiqued his civilian wardrobe. Eli's running commentary on box contents created soundtrack of hope replacing anxiety. The rental house, small but clean with yard for Eli's flight operations, filled quickly with Dorothy-supervised chaos, rendered organized by Colton's spatial intelligence. Neighbors Patricia and Robert Chen, introducing their son Jason for instant friendship, emphasized community's presence after isolation's long reign. Maya's observation about forgetting support's appearance met Colton's gentle reminder that relearning was allowed. First day at Reynolds and Associates brought nerves Colton soothed via text, while Dorothy managed Eli with grandmother's efficiency. Diana Foster's bark about not usually taking students covered enthusiasm for teaching that made Maya's dormant dreams stir toward waking. By evening, possibilities architectural and personal spun through consciousness like blueprints for futures previously unimaginable. Eli's first CAP meeting arrival in uniform Dorothy had pressed to perfection revealed boy transformed by belonging. Cadet Captain Marcus Jefferson's welcoming of nervous new member demonstrated leadership, recognizing potential fear. Within minutes, Eli's integration into group discussing aircraft with serious enthusiasm proved Colton's assessment of readiness accurate. 3 months progression from coffee to lunch to dinner traced relationships' careful development. Dorothy's increasing offers to babysit suggested maternal matchmaking, executed with strategic precision. First dinner alone brought awkwardness dissolved by Maya's laughter about drooling on his shoulder. Colton's addition about snoring earning bread roll thrown with affection rather than anger. Summer thunderstorm's power outage found Maya racing through flooded streets to terrified Eli Dorothy away helping sick friend. Their camping adventure in living room, making fear into excitement, demonstrated resilience learned through practice. Eli's observation about Colonel Hayes teaching that fear was just information showed boy processing strength through trusted filters. Colton's arrival next morning, soaked from driving through storm's aftermath because Maya had mentioned power loss, revealed care transcending casual concern. His willingness to traverse dangerous conditions for possibility of need spoke louder than declarations. Maya's kiss, overdue and perfect, despite circumstances, met Eli's delighted. Finally, with laughter replacing years of guarded distance, 6 months later, deployment orders arrived with inevitability both expected and dreaded. Colton's promise to try harder than anyone at returning carried weight of man who understood promises' limitations but made them anyway. 4 months communication when possible. 2 weeks silence during operations blackout. Tested faith rebuilt from rubble. His eventual message, safe, complicated, home, soon released breath held beyond consciousness. Peterson Air Force Base homecoming found Eli with sign declaring, "My Colonel Hayes," racing across tarmac into arms that caught him with practice born of love. Maya's measured walk allowed them moment before her inclusion, an embrace that encompassed past grief and future possibility equally. The proposal at Air Show, vintage biplane writing question across Colorado's sky while Colton and Eli knelt together, each holding ring and toy plane respectively, created moment where past and future met in present's perfect clarity. Eli's stage-whispered encouragement about extensive practice made Maya's yes emerge, through tears transformed from sorrow to joy. Fort Carson Chapel wedding. Maya in her mother's altered dress, Eli as dual ring-bearer and best man Dorothy crying throughout, created ceremony acknowledging all that brought them here. Vows promising to honor past while building future. To love not despite loss, but through understanding of its weight. Sanctified union built on foundations deeper than unmarred happiness could provide. 2 years later, Maya's architecture firm specializing in veteran housing fulfilled dreams deferred but not destroyed. Colton's training squadron command brought him home nightly to family, expanded by choice and law. Eli's position as youngest CAP squadron leader, dreams of engineering aircraft like mom-designed buildings, showed child thriving in soil of security and love. At Denver Airport, different gate but familiar territory, family traveled together toward Disney World earned through Eli's academic excellence. No exhaustion, no worry, no impossible calculations of survival. Young mother across aisle struggling with crying toddler received Maya's understanding smile and practical help. Kindness paid forward from abundance rather than scarcity. Dorothy's text about their dog destroying couch cushions, threat to keep the puppy anyway, brought laughter recognizing life's pleasant chaos, replacing survival's grim arithmetic. Outside plain windows, sunrise painted clouds, gold with promise that broken things, carefully mended, might indeed fly higher than before they fell. The descent toward Orlando carried family forged in sorrow but defined by joy, proof that love could be rebuilt from ruins. That happiness existed not despite grief but alongside it, that two people who understood loss might together understand something larger than either could compass alone. In the end, what began with exhausted mother sleeping on stranger's shoulder became story of how kindness compounds, how responsibility transforms into care, how broken people might help each other become whole, not through forgetting what was lost, but through building something worthy of all they'd learned in losing. The plane touched down gently, carrying its passengers into whatever comes next, Maya's hand in Colton's, Eli chattering about rides to attempt, Dorothy texting about dog's latest destruction, family complete in its imperfection, love triumphant in its tested truth.